What is up, y'all? Uh, this is going to be a cool video, one that I haven't spoken on before. But for those of you guys that don't know, I'm about a week and a half out from becoming a dad. And owning your own business and stepping into parenthood is like a pretty scary thing. And so I wanted to kind of break down and share with you guys a little bit of what I've kind of done to prep my business for parenthood, how I've kind of stepped into the season, because we've made some crazy shifts in our business. Things that, people probably out there were like, well, why don't you just hire people? Why don't you just, work yourself out of the business? But honestly, like, that's just not the kind of business that I want to build. Like, I really like being involved in every aspect of my business that I'm currently in. So let's kind of backtrack and we'll talk about, 2024 was a really good year for business. We've had a ton of growth. Our trajectory has basically been from 2022 to 2023, business doubled in revenue. 23 to 24, we saw a 60% increase in revenue. And so 2025 was really set up to be, a primed explosion as far as the business goes. Um, but I also knew that family planning was on the horizon, and I knew that at some point Ray would have to take a dose of his own medicine and start really figuring out how to get back that freedom and flexibility piece again. Um, at this point in the business, let's say early 2025. We were a team of seven, myself and six others, all very part-time roles, but still, responsibility to manage, that team and those people and make sure that they had direction, they had clients, they knew projects, tasks that they were gonna be doing. I was a part owner in another company called MoveRx. Shout out to Jared and Kyle out there. And for that company, I kind of took on that project when everything was kind of slower in my life, and as Engage Movement kind of started to grow. MoveRx wasn't taking a ton of time, but it was taking a ton of energy. And so, I had to kind of make some decisions there. I decided to just give them my equity and part ways, and I wish them nothing but the best. It was a great exit. I have to say, most of my exits in this phase of my life have been really good exits. Um, and one of the things that I kind of looked at in my calendar and something that we had been really successful with was the sales process that we were doing, right? I was doing a traditional two-call close, 30-minute discovery call, and then we would do a 60-minute sales call. And then sometimes if people had reservations, we would book another 30-minute call that would go, sales calls could go 60 to 90 minutes sometimes. These second calls could go 30 to 60 minutes sometimes. Sometimes we needed to book a fourth call. That was rare, but that was kind of the buying process, the buying cycle. And I knew that the sales process was something that I was going to want to get off my plate. I didn't really want to hire, a setter and a closer. I wanted to make sure that we only had the right people coming into our program. And I didn't want to put somebody in a spot where it was like their job to just sell them in because, there's a commission attached to it. We really want to maintain high integrity with clients in our community. And I didn't really know what I was going to do, right? I believed that like that was how people bought. People bought through a sales process. Up until this point in my business, that was the only way that I had bought something. I got on the phone with somebody. I said, yeah, I'm in, whatever objections you overcome, that kind of stuff. And so I just kind of had this belief that like that was what I had to do in my business. So end of January, beginning of February, somewhere in those couple weeks there, my wife and I find out that we're expecting our first kid. And the what am I going to do factor as far as in the business and understanding like how I want to be present as a father, how I want to be present as a parent, how I want to be present as a partner for my wife. I really start to think about all these things. I start to think about the business. I start to think about, I've fallen back into a lot of traps, right? I've fallen back into a lot of like 9 to 5. Like I was basically working a 9 to 5. I basically had my schedule was blocked out from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. And that was kind of intentional at that point, right? Like I knew that family was on the horizon. I knew that this was the time to really lay the foundation to build a big reputation for our business. Um, and so I knew quickly that that was time I was going to get back, or I was going to need to get back, right? That sales process. So I think it was like around, February, back in December, actually, I had started working with this coach kind of loosely. I was in their community, in his community. And one of the big things was no sales calls. And so I was like, ooh, this is really interesting. It was something that I knew I wanted to do. Um, but it was something I did not know how to do. So fast forward into March, I go to his mastermind. This was in Mexico. Amazing mastermind, great people. And keep in mind, like I had bought from this guy through a document, like a Notion doc or a Google doc. I can't remember which one it was. And so it kind of plants the seed in my head where it's like, okay, well, if Ray can buy from a Notion document with no calls and just voice memos in the DMs for questions, can my audience do that? So I go to the mastermind, and I had been a good implementer up until that point. But, in March, he asked me to work with him one on one. He invites me to work with him one on one. And it was a scary investment, right? Keep in mind, my wife's pregnant. Um, the income of the business is in a spot where I'm starting to feel a little bit of that scarcity energy of like, oh my gosh, everything's going to change, right? And I say, cool, like I'd love to work with you one on one. Like, what does that look like? He says it's 16 weeks. It's $1,000 a week. And I kind of had like a moment of pause. Like, I'll be honest with you guys, I haven't made that investment in myself in that short of a time frame. You're looking at like $4,300 a month if you kind of balance that out. And I thought about it for a second. He gave me some really good advice. He said, how do you make this decision about what you feel like you need and not about the money? And I thought that was a really good piece of advice. And it was actually exactly what I needed to hear. And so I said, cool. Do you actually have a paid in full option? And so, $14,500 later, I invest in one-on-one coaching. And this really springboards me, right? It gives me a catalyst into implementation. The biggest thing that I learned about myself in this journey and that investment was like Ray needs to have enough in the pot to get an outcome. That was like huge for me. I did not realize that until I made that investment. So in working with him, I really start to get serious in, simplifying the funnel, right? We take our current offer and we make it simpler. It used to be like if you had a new business, we'd work with you for 9 months. If you had an existing business, we'd work for you for 6 months. And it just became like it was going to be too complicated to move to a document process. And so we basically said, look, like we've been getting clients that we've been working with, new business clients. We've been getting them results in 6 months. So like, let's just make everything 6 months. So we go from these two variations of the offer, and then we go to one offer with two tiers of access. So basically we say, okay, there's a 6-month version for both people. Doesn't matter if you're a new business, doesn't matter your existing business looking to implement the blended practice model. And you can either work with me at the community level where you get like, an onboarding call and then you just get access to content, you get access to the group calls, or you can work with me one-on-one where you get closer proximity and it's double the price, right? And so that was the first change that we made, right? We simplified the offer, one offer, two tiers of access. I created I did a couple versions of this, but I created a really strong middle of the funnel training. So for those of you that have followed me on Instagram, You'll see when I do a call to action, it says DM me the key phrase BPM. I'll actually link the training in the comments here below. But that training is really where all of the traffic of our business funnels through. And the big goal of that training is really to replace a lot of like the conversations that we would have on the discovery call, right? And then the goal of the document is to replace the process of the sales call. And so everything is very intentional. So I make this really strong training that outlines who I am, what I do, what's the old way of doing things, what's the new way of doing things. And we start to drive, everybody in our audience to that channel, so that the people it resonates with, they can take a next step to work with us. So once May hits, I'm kind of ready to like dip my toe in, and I remember it was like my last sales call. And the guy was like, let me think about it. And I said, cool, like, why don't I actually just send you over this document that outlines everything we talked about today? And you just let me know what you want to do from there. Like, I didn't really fight hard on the objection. I kind of gave him some space to think. I send him the first version of the document, and he just pays in full, right? Like for my one-on-one offer, my higher end offer. And I was kind of like, holy crap, like this is going to work. So following that call with him, I removed all sales calls from my plate. So I went from, 2024, we probably had like 4 or 5 hours of sales calls, maybe like 3 to 5 hours of sales calls per week, just depending on the week. I think on average we did like 11, 12 hours of calls per month. And so it just kind of depended on, 1 month might be light, 1 month might be heavy. And so it was a lot of time that I was able to get back. So May comes around, that's kind of the first thought process of doing this. June comes around, and this is where like it's like, oh crap, now we're in this new process, right? We're in this process where there's no sales calls. There's just like an introductory call, a 30-minute introductory call. So if you guys ever hop on a call with me, like it's not a sales call. It's just like, hey, who are you? Who am I? What are the things that you're struggling with in your business? Cool. I think I'd be a good fit to help you. And then I'm just going to send you all the information. So it's a very like, you need to make the decision process. And when you make that kind of shift in your business, you're going to take an income dip, right? So June comes around and we take a big dip because now there's a new process, there's a new lag. But I understand that if I want to make this change, I have to go through this dip. Like I cannot get scared and go back to doing sales calls. I could, but what would happen? It would just leave me in the same situation that I was in prior. And so I get through it, right? We probably took about 6 weeks to fill our spot, 6 to 8 weeks to fill our spots with our June open enrollment. And that's like really long. Like, and I started low. I was like, we just want 3 people to buy from this new process. And then we'll close, and then we'll open again, and we'll close, we'll open again. So like the reason I share that with you guys is when you go through a transition process like that, it is freaking scary. Like it's really easy to bail here and just go back to what works, but like that is not going to help me live my ideal life, right? So after about 4 months of this, the process is kind of working. It's like, okay, cool. We're getting people on a wait list. We're enrolling about half of the people on our spots open from the wait list. So when we announce them to the public, they are there's only 2-3 spots left to sell. Last time we kind of opened up, we sold out the spots in like 4 days. So it was a really cool process to kind of implement. It was like showing myself that I could make this process work. I didn't have to do sales calls. I didn't have to do things that I wanted to do. I could really clear out my calendar. And so all of that, like we've gone from, I've gone from owning 2 companies. I exited. Now I only own 1. We went from a team of 7 down to a team of 4. So basically, one of our support coaches, he basically said, hey, this has been great. I'm going to go focus on my business. Awesome. Transitioned him out. Move some of the stuff from my VA over to somebody that's doing a little bit of operations work for us. So she's kind of taking on a little bit more. Keeping my marketing girl on, and one more support coach, and then moving my graphic designer to just project based instead of retainer based, right? Because the way that I do content now is so different. So by getting like all of those meetings, all of those sales calls, all those things off my plate, and being, scaling the business in a way where we have a scalable offer, that community level offer, I've been able to get my workload down to about 4 hours per day. So let's call it 20 hours per week. And that's been awesome. I also structure my week where I don't usually do a lot of meetings on Mondays. Some Mondays are very much flexible days. They're like vision days. They're moving the business forward days. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday is when I meet with clients. And then pretty much every other Friday is off. Friday is usually like 1 to 2 calls. They're very light days. And so I have a lot of flexibility within the business now. And so the reason why I wanted to share this with you guys is because I know that a lot of you out there want to take leaps. You want to go through processes that give you more freedom, flexibility. You don't want to be working 40 hours anymore. And I resonate with that, right? That's exactly the reason why I started Engage Movement in the first place, in its first iteration and its second iteration. And so having control to do all this has just been huge for me, absolutely huge for me. I'm basically taking, the second half of the month off. Once our daughter gets here, we'll have like 3 weeks off. And everything is just super flexible in the business right now. 2025 is probably setting up to match 2024 revenue, but literally in half the time. So sometimes the wins in business aren't always making more money. It's in figuring out how to get into a more efficient business model. And if you guys know anything about me, you know that like efficiency is my freaking thing. And so I just want to share that with you guys, like whether you are thinking of taking what you do fully online because you want to live that journey, whether you are blending your in-person practice, and adding a virtual offer to it, like you have to be willing to go through the downtimes so that you can get to the point where everything is flexible. You have to go through that contraction so that you can hit that expansion. You have to go through that dip so you can have the rally. Like that is the price of admission to the next step. The biggest thing I think people just need to kind of look into and think about is, are you ready to become the person who can do that? Like, do you have the stomach for it? Can you see a month that dips down 50% in revenue? And can you say, well, that sucks, but it was expected, so that you can have, 200% growth 2-3 months later, so that you can have recurring revenue and stability in your business, so that you can have processes in your business that don't tie you to a schedule, don't tie you to time. So I wanted to share that with you guys because I know that, we work with a lot of people who are stepping into parenthood, and I'm not immune to the business things in life that, will eat up your time. So I will keep you guys posted on this journey, but I wanted to share, a lot of what we did to get those sales calls off the books, to condense the team, to make the business more efficient, to step out of projects and roles and things that no longer felt in alignment. Um, it takes a lot to do that stuff, guys. But I want to share that with you. And so if there's anything that resonated here that you want to chat about, just ping me over on Instagram at Ray Gorman DPT. I'll drop that other training below. And hope you guys have a great day. Probably my next YouTube video, I will actually be a dad. And so I'll probably have to do one about how do I run my business as a father with a newborn. And so I'm looking forward to updating y'all with that. All right, guys, have a great day.